Michael Solomon and myself to welcome you for this first of the Future of Luxury roundtables. Today, really focused on the virtual economy. And before Michael and I introduce our speakers, I just would like to say a few words of introduction, and we're going to kick off with soon a poll to get you to know a little bit about you. So without due delay, I would like to just share my screen. And at IMD, my colleagues and I work a lot in the luxury space. I spearhead a certain amount of activities in that space. In just 1 month, we're going to kick off the 5th Reinventing Luxury Lab, which this year will focus on a very important topic of the purposeful and sustainability transformations. And what does it mean concretely for all the actors in the luxury sectors? And I must say, we're going to be really privileged. Every year we have extraordinary speakers, but this year we're going to have Chanel, a firm that is notoriously confidential about anything, but they're going to share with us the experience for transforming for sustainability. So IMD is a leading international business school, and Forbes, you probably know even more, is the leader in the space of entrepreneurship, innovation. The Forbes 30 under 30 annual competition is really groundbreaking and really uncovers really pepits of talents. And I would like to introduce briefly my partner in crime, Michael Solomon, who is not only the chief editor of Forbes Life, a publication dedicated to luxury lifestyle, especially for Forbes, but he's also really someone that I admire a lot for his wit, for his curiosity, and he's so knowledgeable about the different sectors of the luxury industry. So it's really a great pleasure to have this opportunity to collaborate, and Michael will facilitate most of this discussion today. And he will introduce our brilliant panelists, will introduce themselves also in a few minutes. So what's the focus? What can you expect today? We have structured this very loose and informal conversation, which is going to be really insightful around 4 priority topics. And let's see if we have time to cover all the topics. We'll do our best, but this is to giving you a little bit of the roadmap. All the team here is also curious to know where you stand on this journey towards the virtual economy. So I'm going to launch a poll now to let you answer this question. Do you see the poll well on your screen? Yes? Okay, so I think I'm going to show you the results, but I'll let a few of you respond, just a few more seconds. So what you can see with those results showing is that this roundtable is really highly necessary. And it's a bit of a split, between those who have a low maturity and those who have a moderate maturity. So I think it's going to be really exciting, and I thank you for sharing those results. So, Michael, it's up to you if you want to start this discussion. I know we have a lot of interesting things to say. And my role will be to facilitate the chats and your questions. Please feel free at any time to drop comments and questions in the chat box. And I will make sure that you can even say, who would you like to answer your question? and we'll take them throughout this roundtable. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. We have a really exciting panel planned today, and with an exceptional panel on a great topic. I was really glad to see that the poll results were about where I thought they'd be. I thought they'd be around 40, 40, 20. It's been a difficult year. I don't have to tell you all what a trying year and a half it has been, both personally and professionally. It seemed that our economy ground to a halt in different sectors over the last year and a half. But there was one area that seemed to be breaking through. And for many people, it seemed like it was a new economy, the virtual economy. But I'm here to tell you it isn't new. It's been around for a very long time. And I want to start by stepping back about 50 years to a cover story Forbes magazine did in 1967. In April 1967, Forbes did a story called "Is Money Really Necessary?" Now, the Bible of capitalism was not advocating for the end of money, make no mistake. What it was saying was, in the near future, you may not need physical money. You may not need paper money, and God knows we don't need more coins in our lives. What the magazine got wrong 55 years ago is that this paperless economy wasn't a year or three away. The magazine thought that in the early 1970s, we would be through with paper money and coins, and that we would all have electronic payments. We would get our paychecks electronically. We would transfer money to ourselves and to institutions electronically. And that seems like such a strange concept. But here we are 50 years later, and of course we know we get our paychecks electronically. We Venmo payments to our friends. We pay for things in the real economy and the virtual economy. But last year, the virtual economy, most notably the NFT world, really exploded. To put it in some perspective, it really touched every sector of lifestyle, and particularly luxury lifestyle. You had brands such as Gucci doing sneakers, Ralph Lauren doing full outfits and accessories. You had Porsche doing an NFT. You had Givenchy doing an NFT. Coca-Cola did an NFT. Forbes magazine did an NFT of its cover, selling for $333,333. A cover of the Winklevoss twins. And of course, the main area in which I think everyone is aware of is the art world. The art world simply exploded last year in NFTs, most notably Beeple's $69 million sale at Christie's. It's estimated that the NFT market was about $2.5 billion in the first half of 2021. To put that in some perspective, last year it was estimated in the same period that economy was about $13.7 million. And that's a tremendous jump, obviously. But I don't want to just focus on numbers. Whenever I do luxury panels, I'm always reminded of the great Oscar Wilde quote from Lady Windermere's fan, that a cynic is someone who knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. So with that as our preface, I would love our panel to introduce themselves. Daniela, I will start with you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Stefan. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. My name is Daniela. I worked 20 years in luxury, and now I'm the Secretary General of the Aura Blockchain Consortium. And coming to what you said before, Stefan and Michael, I think, not just we're going to pay really in, we're going to buy a handbag and really pay in Bitcoin or NFTs or dollars. So we will see what the future brings. But yeah.
John, tell us about yourself.
I'm Michael. I enjoy any conversation that begins with an Oscar Wilde quote. So thanks very much for that introduction. My name is John Egan. I'm the CEO of L'Atelier BNP Paribas. We're a foresight business owned by BNP. My background is economics and venture capital. And what we do is we use engines to process massive amounts of data that help us forecast emerging future markets. And for the last 3 or 4 years, a central tenet of that has been what we refer to as the virtual economy.
Thank you. Michael Del Castillo, tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Associate Editor of Blockchain and Cryptocurrency at Forbes. and helping put together the new soon to be launched Forbes Digital Assets platform. Forbes is really taking blockchain and cryptocurrency seriously. And in addition to breaking news and in-depth features like the world has gotten used to, our blockchain and crypto coverage is soon going to be supercharged with all kinds of fun bells and whistles that will help make the reading experience even more informative. And I'm very excited to be here.
Excellent. Now I'm told I don't see Ben on this panel, but is Ben Arabo, are you on? Can you tell us about yourself? Ben, introduce yourself. I'll introduce Ben. Ben is the CEO of Jacob & Co., which I'm sure many of you know is a luxury watch and jewelry brand. It was founded by his father. Ben, are you talking? Because we can't hear you. I'll continue. Ben is also, Stefan mentioned, we have the Forbes 30 Under 30 program, and Ben was a 30 Under 30 lister in 2021 for work he did outside of Jacob & Co. And he's real, as you will soon hear, he has been instrumental in bringing NFTs to Jacob & Co. So with that, I'd like to take another step back and have John just sort of set the table for us. John Latelier did a fantastic report earlier this year, I believe it was in February, explaining the virtual economy to everyone. And I know, John, that you'll say that in the last 6 months or so that has changed dramatically. But John, just give us a sense of what is the virtual economy? How does it relate to metaverses, or how does it interact with metaverses? Give us the overview.
Sure. It's a sign of the times, Michael. It was February the year before we published it, but it does feel like one long year. So I think that is an excusable error. The one thing that you said in your introduction that really stuck with me, resonated, was this idea that Forbes had written this piece in the 50s, 55 years ago, imagining a world that went moneyless. And I think that the real lesson we can learn from that is actually technology seen through a certain lens is not an enabler, it's a restraint. It restricts our imagination. We can always imagine well beyond what technology can enable, facilitate. And so it creates these kind of powerful moments where we see this glimpse of the future. Our imagination can grasp it, but the technology is not yet there. And for quite a long time, for decades now, people have imagined this virtual environment, these marketplaces and jobs and assets that were exclusively virtual in nature, that were going to lead to new and parallel and alternatives and augmented lives. And people thought it would arrive in the 90s, and then thought that it would arrive in the early 2000s, and it just didn't. It didn't happen. But a confluence of different factors recently has really expedited the emergence of this space. One of those issues clearly was COVID. The fact that more and more people were spending time indoors gave them an opportunity, the time, the capacity necessary to engage in an environment that they wouldn't typically have engaged with. A second one is the emergence of decentralized economies and the crypto world more generally. That over the last 10 years has broken through obviously into the mainstream and has given a lot of people both a point of access and also capital to deploy in this space. The third one is characteristically more abstract, and we have to take a step back to consider it, but the world that we inhabit today and the consequences of the global financial crisis in 2008 is such that the environment that most younger people under 40 live in right now is one where social mobility has been significantly degraded in the developed world. Economic inequalities are getting significantly worse, and the opportunity for people to acquire assets and to become socially mobile or even socially well or economically safe over the course of their life has degraded quite significantly. So for a large population of younger people, they're looking for a world, an environment, an economy within which they can prosper and they can find hope. And this virtual economy is that for a lot of people. Now, virtual economy as a term, where does one thing start, another thing end? And we did our best to try and create some parameters around some of the terminology that we're hearing now: metaverse, the crypto economy, virtual economy. And what we were really looking for within the virtual economy was the emergence of environments and platforms that facilitated income based on virtual or digital assets within exclusively digital platforms. That was our starting point. So we excluded quite a lot of the crypto space for that, bar some exceptions, the likes of Mana, for instance, and Decentraland, which is a wholly decentralized city space, and a few others. But by and large, we excluded the crypto economy, and we also excluded the traditional e-commerce digital economy. The virtual economy does, in our view, include most of the metaverse. I'm sure we'll get into that in time to come, but it is broader than that, because it's not speaking specifically to the nature of the environment that you exist within. It's speaking to the economic infrastructure that facilitates jobs, marketplaces, and assets that exist within these digital domains. And I think the fascinating thing we're beginning to see now is the increasing frequency of people achieving subsidiary incomes within virtual domains in new ways. I'll stop there for now because I don't want to spoil the ending, but I think that maybe sets us up.
John, if you know the ending, could you tell us? Because that way we could make a lot of money if we knew the ending.
I agree.
Daniela, I'm going to throw to you. Daniela, I mentioned a lot of terms in my introduction. Tell us about blockchain. Tell us about the importance of blockchain to this virtual economy. What does it do, and why does it matter so much?
Sure, but just to say, going straight to the ending, you're really missing a lot of the fun. So let's make this a journey. In terms of blockchain, so blockchain is a shared immutable ledger that really facilitates the process of recording transactions and tracking assets in a network. The asset can be either tangible or intangible. So it can be a house, it can be a car, it can be cash, it can be a handbag, it can be a watch. Or it can be intangible, and that means IP or patents or a podcast or a video. And the idea is that anything virtual can have value and can be tracked. You can trade it on a blockchain network, and it really reduces the risk. It cuts the cost for all involved. It cuts out the middleman, and the information is stored, and you cannot tamper it or hack it, and it cannot be changed. And for instance, on our blockchain, so we have a permission-based private blockchain, and we actually guarantee to our luxury members that this information is available for the next 100 years.
Thank you. I mean, the other way I explain it, and I think this is very helpful for people who are used to dealing in, say, the real world, it's a digital provenance in simple terms. I always explain it that way, that it lets you track who has owned it, and also it lets you track for the future who is owning it. And I think one other interesting aspect of having the blockchain technology under it is that the creator can make money going forward, or the creator's heirs can make money going forward, because you can build that into the code, which I think is very fascinating. When an artist sells a painting, traditionally, they make money only when they sell it the first time. Now you can make money going forward for generations. Michael, I'm going to go to you next. I used the term NFT in the beginning. Tell us about NFTs and what they are and why they have taken off this year.
Absolutely, happily. I think defining that term is really good, especially for a luxury panel like this. So just quite simply, NFT is non-fungible token. I think we all know what non is. We all know what token is. We'll take just a second here and talk about fungibility, because that's the crucial component here. So fungibility is the sameness of a thing, I think, is one way to think of it. Every dollar is the same as every other dollar. If I have a dollar and you have a dollar and we trade them, we both still have the exact same thing, even though it might have a different number on it. Bitcoin is a fungible token. Ethereum is a fungible token. The first generation of cryptocurrencies were all fungible tokens. I should say the first generation of crypto assets were all fungible tokens. If I have a Bitcoin and you have a Bitcoin and we trade them, nothing has happened. We each have the same value. But with luxury, fungibility is not really what you want, because you want exclusivity, which in a sense is the opposite of fungibility. A non-fungible token, every single one is different, or at very least rare. So the way I like to describe it is, what blockchain did was let you prove that a digital thing exists only in one place at a time. And in a world where you can copy and paste digital objects just with a couple keystrokes, the ability to prove that something was original was a huge technological breakthrough. So a digital object was original. After the world got used to fungible tokens trading hands, traditional markets valuing fungible assets, I think it slowly started to get ready for applying some of the same principles with non-fungible assets. And now, if you sort of think of a Bitcoin, if you will, a fungible object, and sort of like undress it, take its exterior apart, keep the interior blockchain the same, and then put something new over the top of it, put a piece of artwork over the top of it, put a song over the top of it, put a digital shoe over the top of it, and you can start to see how that asset moving hands accomplishes something similar. And then the last step here is, how does it relate to the metaverse, right? So the metaverse I think of as the internet meets a video game. If the internet had a landscape, if the internet had addresses that you could walk to in a virtual world, that's kind of what the metaverse is. And in this virtual place, you want virtual objects. You will have a virtual avatar, a virtual version of yourself. And that virtual version of yourself might want to wear high heels or a top hat. And each one of those objects could become a non-fungible token.
Oddly enough, I took off my high heels and top hat just before we began this panel. Ben, let's go to you. Ben, you entered the NFT world this year when Jacob & Co. released what was meant to be the first NFT watch. You got scooped a little, but kind of, by Mr. Jean-Claude Biver, who released an NFT of his own. But I still credit you as really having the first NFT watch. Tell us about that project. Why was it important to you? How did it come about? And was it a success in your view?
Yeah, so we our intentions was to be the first in the space. It was our fault that we launched a little bit too early. We had a 2-week plan to launch, and then as you said, Beaver came out and launched his own. But we were still the first digital NFT to launch in the luxury space, specifically, in the watch space. So what was the question? I'm sorry.
Well, the question is, how did you decide to enter the NFT world? How did you decide to design an NFT watch? What was the creative process like for you, and what did you think it would open up for your customer?
Okay, so we wanted to be the first brand to come out with an NFT, and we wanted to introduce the possibility of NFTs in the luxury space. We feel like the potential for NFT in the luxury space is significant, and it's going to play a healthy role in the luxury space for a few different factors. For one, for consumers to have the digital copy of their product that they're purchasing, and that gives them the ability to have a record of authenticity, but also it allows them to track how the product is switching hands in the secondary market or in the gray market, to keep track of the increase or decrease of value. A significant amount of people who purchase luxury goods are purchasing them because they enjoy them, but also as part of an investment. And tracking that investment digitally is really important, because right now, the way luxury goods are tracked, I mean, there isn't really no way that luxury goods are tracked. It's based on, how much demand there is for a specific item, and how much people think they could get away with selling it for. But being able to track a set of luxury goods throughout, years and years of data could prove to be a significant player and part of the luxury space for years to come.
Daniela, when Ara's advising clients, What does Aura tell clients about this world and how soon they should get in it and whether it's right? Do you think, let's back up, do you think it's right for every brand?
I think it's, no, to answer your question, Michael, no, it's not right for every brand. I think a brand really has to ask themselves, what do our target audience, what do our brand aficionados, what they're looking for, and where do I want to take my brand? You know, the Our Blockchain Consortium is, came together 3 years ago by Richemont, LVMH, and Prada Group. We are a non-profit association, and we are really from luxury brands for luxury brands. And we provide, we have our own private permission-based blockchain where we provide digital certificate and twins, very much what Ben just said. And that's really for traceability, for provenance, upstream and downstream. And we are the only blockchain providing that in the luxury space, upstream and downstream. So this is one part of the solution. And at the same time, we are working on our NFT solution. And this is very much depending on where the brand wants to go. And when we speak to our member brands, but also independent brands we are onboarding right now, it's really about where do you want to take your brand? Where's revenue coming from? Where do you want to connect and touch base with your clients? And then it depends if it fits in your strategy. When we speak to clients, I think you really have to see NFTs as part of your long-term product strategy. And I think there are 5 ways how to approach this. The first one is really the intention. What is the purpose of your drop? How do you see the collection of your virtual product in general? What's the story? What's the community? What's the utility? Can you breed it? Will you basically divide it? So that's really first the intention. The second part is in terms of how large will the collection be? What will be the scarcity? Will there be one piece where you have just one, or will it be others where you have 10,000? So it really depends on how you structure that collection. This is the second part. The third part is really about marketing and who you target. Is it the crypto community? Is it the people who speculate? Is it your brand aficionados? And here our advice is really to address both. And you have to tackle, you have a different market plan for that. And then the last one is, where do you want to launch it? Do you want to launch it on your own NFT website? We provide a solution for that, where it's your own, they provide a white label solution for that. Or is it on an NFT marketplace? And I think these 4 parts, and then again, to drive the community, to talk to the community via Twitter, via Discord, via Telegram, and really animate these communities. And I think all these aspects, these 5 ways I just outlined, I think you have to think through, and then you can have a successful NFT launch.
And John, who is the consumer? You talked a little bit about who you thought the consumer was. I don't think it's just a question of age, although I do. Daniela the other day gave a fantastic example talking about a 55-year-old man and a 25-year-old man. And if you gave them a choice of a Tom Ford suit or a virtual Tom Ford suit, which would they choose? On behalf of someone who's about to turn 55 in a few weeks, I can tell you, if I could fit in an actual Tom Ford suit, I would. I have no need for a virtual Tom Ford suit. But the 25-year-old would say, I assume, why would I need a Tom Ford suit? Where would I wear that? So is this generational, or is it more psychographic, or is it a little both?
I'm not sure that is being determined yet, not in any conclusive way, although intuitively, I think we all probably see that it skews younger and that the profile of people who are most immersed in the NFT space right now are the people who are also quite immersed in the crypto space 3, 4, 5 years ago. And most of them have significant amounts of Ethereum, primarily Ethereum, that they can spend. There are another constituent base of people who, let's call them an investment cohort, and they are deploying capital in search of returns, and that I think is age agnostic. But I think to the core of your point, who does this really appeal to? So who wants to buy a CryptoPunk at release when it was a number of years ago, and who wanted to buy a CryptoKitty? Who saw that and really felt like this resonates with me? This is something I want to be involved in. I do think that they tend to be people who are a little bit younger, probably, digitally native, obviously, because there was certainly a degree of technical fluency required in the earlier stage. Even now, I think for the average person to engage in this space, it's not simple, it's not straightforward. You could easily, just a simple thing like transferring ETH from one wallet to another could easily go wrong. You could lose a lot of money if you're not paying attention. So I think that it does tend to skew towards younger, more digitally native. But I think that at the core of this, as we see it expand and evolve, what are the things that are actually driving interest in it? And I think there's probably a number of areas where we can really see where a drop would resonate with people. And one is if it's created by somebody exceptional, somebody that we really believe in. Like if it's a Banksy NFT, and if this is the way he's chosen to create his newest piece, well, then it's going to have interest because it's an artwork in a new form. Then there is the zeitgeist work. So stuff like CryptoKitties, Meebits, CryptoPunk, the stuff that and Bored Apes now as well, stuff that was there at the beginning of this process and is indicative not necessarily of the creators, but of a moment in time, of the zeitgeist, cultural zeitgeist that will be remembered for a very, very long time. I would not be at all surprised if we were able to get a glimpse of the 40, 50-year future now and see great business schools teaching classes in economics about Bored Ape Yacht Club or CryptoPunks. I think that beyond that, then we see utility. So people who want NFTs for specific utility, memorabilia, and then collectibles. And I think it's the people who are interested in those areas. That's who's been drawn to it at the moment. And that can be age agnostic, but it does require some degree of savvy.
That's a perfect transition for Ben, who I see smiling there, because I know, Ben, you are a CryptoPunk collector, but without telling us who purchased your NFT watch, I assume you know who purchased it. Can you tell us the demographic of the customer who purchased the Jacob & Co. NFT watch?
Yeah, it was a 35-year-old male who is a significant player in the crypto and NFT space. He is a client of ours, and he was actually one of the first to talk to me about NFTs in the luxury space and help me brainstorm the development of the NFT that we created. It was sold for $100,000.
So he was really, as Daniela said, he was really approaching it from the crypto perspective, but also from the watch collector perspective. So it really spoke to both sides of him that way. And
correct.
And you
didn't
create a physical watch.
Sorry?
You didn't create a physical watch with that. It's simply a digital asset.
Yeah. But our next big project is entering into the physical and digital NFT space. For somebody like my friend and client who purchased the NFT, he is a watch collector. He is a luxury good collector. And for him to have the ability to have the physical good and the digital copy of it and to be able to track it is something that it's exciting for him. It's a project. It gives him more control of his luxury goods and luxury products. So, that's our next big phase is entering into the both physical and digital NFT space and pairing them together.
Michael, you were going to jump in.
Yeah, one of the things I like about that, even though we don't know a lot about that purchaser, we know a little bit about that purchaser, that it was a leader in the crypto space. And why I think that's interesting is because it starts to show how NFTs can start to accumulate value through throughout their life cycle. We already heard about the value of who creates the NFT and giving it a dollar amount. But that's only part of the story, because once the NFT is created, who purchases it can also start to give it value. It reminds me of my favorite bookstore, Bauman's Rare Books in Manhattan. You can go there and you're not going to just get a Paradise Lost by John Milton. You're going to get the Paradise Lost by John Milton that was in Benjamin Franklin's private library. And it's valuable because of who owned it later on and what happened to it. Until NFTs, we did not have that ability. So I might find a digital piece of art that I like by my favorite artist and save it to my screen top. And every time I open my computer, I can see the artwork from my favorite artist. But that artwork has no provenance. There's no record of where it came from. And I can imagine a world where if the purchaser of that $100,000 digital watch ever wanted to make himself known, and he was, for example, Vitalik Buterin, the creator of Ethereum. Now that work of that object has value not just because of who created it, but who bought it. And I think that is where the luxury world really starts to see something new evolve out of the NFT space.
John, do you agree with that? Do you see the world the same way that way? And now I don't want to paint a completely rosy picture. I also want to talk about some of the pitfalls and threats in this world. So John, do you agree with Michael about that?
I do. I agree strongly with that point. I'd build on it a little bit as well, in that we're clearly seeing now that with some of these collectibles, the NFT collectibles, there's a sense of community, and this is exclusive access. So it's like buying your ticket, and you could have major celebrities and figures of influence within this community that you've just bought into as part of it. And I think that is a significant part of the appeal as well. And we're certainly seeing a consequence of that in the sports and entertainment world are now crossing over with the crypto world from the last decade. They're now intersecting in a very real way in the NFT space because they're part of these Telegram groups and they're part of the community from buying these NFTs. And there's real world value in that.
Despite all that, John, why do people still think that this is I talked about it being a $2.5 billion marketplace. John, why do people still think this is a fad?
I suppose it's very difficult to understand. The fundamental analysis is lacking. So if you're from the Warren Buffett School of Investment, you're going to look at this and think, well, this is a challenging justification. But I think the fact that it's very difficult to understand, it seems on the face of it to have little traditional value to people, and that a lot of it's based on perception. But I think as well, we're struggling, generally speaking, to come to terms with how the economy has changed post-2008, especially given the amount of quantitative easing that we've seen globally and the way people now consider money differently. And I think there is sufficient mainstreamization of this broader space now to feel like it's pushed beyond the fad phase. And I think the question then becomes, well, is it a bubble? And it's very, very difficult to tell whether or not it's a bubble because there isn't typically any underlying revenue. So it's not like we can assess yield against like-for-like assets. So it may well be a bubble, but it's a bubble that's much closer to the tulip bubble than a stock bubble. And that's when we have a conversation like that, there's a famous expression about economists that economists have predicted 12 of the last 8 recessions. At some point, this space will see a decline. It already has. It's seen 2 significant ones already. It'll see more. But I think the underlying infrastructure, and we have to keep this in mind, that regardless of what your perception of NFTs, if you think somebody is crazy for buying a $69 billion Beeple piece or a $1.3 million ETH rock, if you think someone's crazy for doing that, I think it's kind of important to distinguish between the idea of an NFT-based proposition and the underlying economic infrastructures that NFTs and the protocol provides, which is they allow for the first time the creation of digital assets, unique digital assets. And that's the step forward. So why do I not think it's a fad? It's because this is significant. And anybody who has the idea that unique digital assets is significant hasn't been paying attention for the last 30 years. The amount Go ahead, Mike.
I'll piggyback on you there. The way you talked about the fundamental analysis is lacking. To a degree, yeah, that's right. Like, this is all very, very new. But I think, the smart investor or the smart luxury goods consumer can look at that underlying infrastructure And there's a lot more data there on that. So going back to that original image I had, if you imagine a Bitcoin and sort of undress it, what's left is the underlying blockchain. And when you put new clothes on that blockchain, and that those new clothes look like a Tom Ford suit or a top hat or a work of art, you've changed the exterior, but the underlying technology is actually much older. In fact, blockchain's 11 years old now. And while NFTs might be new, we have data going back to 2009 about what the blockchain is doing with digital assets. And there is a normal hype cycle. There is a normal, explosion of interest, a slow fall, a bottom, and then a slow rise to the top. But I don't think NFTs are going to be going through that same cycle over the 10, 11 year period that it took Bitcoin to get to where it is. I think NFTs are going to benefit from all of the education that has happened in the world as a result of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and really skip the first 2/3 of that hype cycle.
Yeah,
Michael? Yeah, sorry, John, go ahead. Michael, I have a question to the audience.
Ask away.
Yeah, so how do you square what we've just heard from John, from Ben, this idea that for a collector or a fan of luxury products, not only do you know who designed the product, but you will also know over generations who owned it. How do you square that with Daniela's point that you really have to think strategically? It might not be for every brand, because if you believe in the former part, then it's a no-brainer. So how do we refine the strategy question on that?
Danielle, I'll give that to, why don't you take the first shot at that, Daniela?
So first of all, if I can just rebound to what John just said, I think it's not just the underlying infrastructure, but what we really should pay attention to is the underlying changes in society, and especially John, what you mentioned before about digital natives. It's really collecting and being passionate about brands or about art or about other things or about watches, to your point, Ben. It's really about collecting, and whether this is physical or digital is really the same thing. And in terms of what you said, Ben, it's really for your client. It's bringing together the best of both worlds. And the other point, what you said with Michael, with the Tom Ford suit, it's really for the 55-year-old, he might not have any use for the digital Tom Ford suit. Actually, the 25-year-old will have no use for the physical Tom Ford suit use. But if you look at, I think, is it like in the US, 10% of all the youngsters, sort of the 15-year-olds, they own like Dogecoin or something. So for them, having a digital collection makes absolute sense. So I think if you look at NFT buyer research or consumer research, especially the Gen Zs and millennials, who are, by the way, the biggest consort of luxury consumers today, it's absolutely normal to have virtual product.
And Ben, I mentioned that you are not only an executive, but a collector. So what have you learned as a collector, as a consumer, that has helped you as an executive think about building out NFTs and other digital assets?
Well, I mean, we're still in the very beginning stages of all of this. And for me right now, to be honest, it's exploratory to get an understanding of the type of creatives that are coming out and where the demand is shifting for us to learn and continue to educate ourselves for us to develop our next big NFT project.
I think go ahead. If you wanted to try to understand whether or not this was right for you, I think it goes back to that old cliche. Where's the most important 3 parts of real estate investment are location, location, location. Like, go to where your customers are. And if you ask yourself, where are my customers? If they're not living in a metaverse, if they're not existing digital lives, then this might not necessarily be for you yet. I think I don't want, I'm not assuming that that Benjamin's client it has real estate in Decentraland or some other virtual world, but he is in the crypto world, right? So in a lot of ways, Benjamin's client is in the metaverse. He's in that world, and so it makes perfect sense for that client to build something for that client. Like if your clients aren't there, you have to make the decision to either build something that they might not want, or take the extra burden of helping them get there, right? And I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs are making that decision, because they want to anticipate that demand, build something before it exists, build something before the demand exists, and be ready for it when their clients and customers want it.
I want to go back to the threat idea and what are some of the things that can short circuit an economy like this. John, you and Michael disagree a little bit about centralization versus decentralization. Can you talk about, Michael has this idea that a brand like LVMH, a conglomerate like LVMH, operates in a way a central bank once did. That if you put together all the brands of LVMH, in a way they become a 21st century central bank. Talk about centralization versus decentralization in this virtual economy.
So just to explain the difference between the two things quickly, centralization is the world that we're used to. Large companies own resources, have certain competence, skills, characteristics, and they manage the infrastructure and ecosystem that exists within those parameters. It's what we're all used to. Over the last 15 years, we've seen the emergence of decentralized platforms. So a decentralization of trust, responsibility, action, activity, most famously with Bitcoin. And the idea of the metaverse pre-exists significantly the notion of decentralization in the way that we see it today. The metaverse idea has been around for quite a while, and none of those early iterations of the metaverse was it ever decentralized. But what's happened is now the decentralization community, the crypto community in general, have really taken possession and are the key drivers of the metaverse-orientated concepts, philosophy, businesses right now. And a consequence of that is the idea of the open metaverse is kind of integral to the notion of this environment moving forward. And I philosophically agree with that. However, I also think it is significantly plausible that large organizations with massive balance sheets are going to create their own centralized versions of the metaverse, a metaverse, that they have control over. They act as government and central banks within these worlds, and they'll have capacity to deploy quicker. And just a couple of key points on this. One is interoperability is a very difficult thing to do. So the concept is that you buy you buy some couture costume, a skin, and you wear it within one decentralized environment. Your avatar can then transition to another environment where they can continue wearing this. And that is the idea. Like, very simply put, that's the goal. But it's an extraordinarily complex thing to do, to create global interoperability across different platforms with different levels of resources across those platforms. Extremely difficult thing to do, hasn't been achieved yet. It's significantly more easy to create a centralized iteration of that. So it's not that I necessarily disagree with Michael philosophically. It's just that I think we are still very early on in the metaverse concept. And the analogy that I often use here is that one of the greatest technological accomplishments in retail that I've seen in recent years in terms of product was a game called Red Dead Redemption 2, an extraordinary accomplishment in gaming. Created an open world environment that is incredible detail, really amazing. It's like existing within a movie. But even with that, it took 7 years to develop it, and it's still a small world that you can roam around. The idea of creating a never-ending, infinite space that is rich in detail and interoperable across platforms at the current time is decades away. It's a long, long time away. So we need to see some major breakthroughs to enable that. So it's not that I don't think we necessarily disagree. I think that I expect that we'll see a coexistence of centralized platforms that call themselves the metaverse, a metaverse, whatever it happens to be, and then decentralized platforms. One thing I would say is the really significant advantage that open metaverse has is the fact that the crypto space supports it, is behind it, and is funding it. And there's such enormous amounts of capital there right now.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of coordination.
If your company is going to build its own metaverse, if you're Gucci and you're going to build a Gucci metaverse, you have constructed the metaverse equivalent of an intranet. Think of the early days of the internet, but when companies thought it was insane to put their valuable data on a public internet. They didn't trust the privacy. They didn't trust the protections. They thought that they were giving away their company secrets, and their gateway drug to the internet was in intranets. And this was a network of computers, usually within an actual physical office building. If you build a Gucci metaverse or an LVMH metaverse or a Cartier metaverse, you have done the equivalent of creating an intranet, which is great and fine. And intranets were crucial to the development of the internet, where all of this stuff was connected. But just recognize that you have taken the first step towards that process. And in the end, you don't want to own it all, because if you own it all, the value of the product is actually diminished. You want people to be able to take your product somewhere that you don't own, right? Like the power of having a Gucci handbag is even more powerful if you can take it into a competitor's store and strut that Gucci handbag around. And I think that's the metaverse, where your digital goods can be carried into the competitor's offices.
I think Michael is philosophically correct, but conceptually incorrect. And where the analogy falls down is that the internet is not decentralized. Web 1 and Web 2.0 are not decentralized. So Web 3, Web 4, Web 5, yes, maybe we get there. But that's the problem with that analogy. Although I think the point you're trying to make still stands, and it's a real decision that brands need to make now about open versus closed. There are so many risks, though, with open for a big brand in terms of reputation, etc. I get why they're uncomfortable, but there's lots of access points. For instance, and this is one thing I think it's really important to distinguish. If you create an NFT, that does not immediately mean you're in the metaverse or you're exposed to risks of a kind of libertarian, digital libertarian, vice-laden hellscape that exists in the metaverse somewhere. It just means you've created an NFT. NFTs don't automatically mean metaverse. The metaverse it's an environment. It's a created, coordinated, understood, established environment within which people can interact with each other and things in a digital space. But there's stepping stones to this, and I don't think we need to necessarily mix the idea of a luxury brand issuing digital assets with the idea of them being participants in an involved metaverse.
Can I just...
Daniela, continue, and then we have a question also.
We have a question, yes.
Sure. Just if I can get John and Michael from the metaverses back on this planet for now. I mean, NFTs is great, virtual good is great. This is all coming and it's already here. But I want to link to what Ben said and to actually one solution. You know, we have on our permission private blockchain, double-digit NFTs we're producing since 2 years. And these are basically certificates of ownership and certificates of authenticity. And that's already a really good step for luxury brands to start. This will make the transfer of ownership actually much easier. It makes resale much more efficient and really convenient. If I want to pass on something to my daughter, all the record is there, how I maintained my watch, for instance. And we have use cases, if that's Cartier or Louis Vuitton or Hublot or Bulgari, who are using it practically. And this is not yet, in the metaverse something, but really practical, how you make your luxury purchase more convenient.
Daniela, why is our blockchain limited to only 100 years of records, especially if you want to be able to pass on your inheritance to future generations?
Yeah, that's a good question. So far, I think we are enterprise grade. We have the only blockchain solution for luxury, which is enterprise grade, and we guarantee 100 years, which I think is already a lot. So
we have a question from Kurt.
Yeah,
Kurt asks, is there a recognized regulatory agency to ensure that an NFT is truly unique? I'll open that to all of you.
I take a first crack. I don't know there's a sort of agency. I'm sure John has an opinion on that. What I can say is that, for instance, we are working on our NFT solution, given that we have the founding members and we have other brands and independent brands being part of our blockchain consortium. If you buy that on the NFT.our blockchain consortium website, it's real. If you buy it on a multi-brand marketplace, you can never be sure it's real, only if you have the ID and we double check it, which is painful. So for instance, one of the advantages we bring from our side is that, Louis Vuitton or Givenchy or the member brands are part of our blockchain consortium, and therefore it's curated, and we only obviously allow the real brands to issue NFTs.
Ben, I want to go to you for a second. How are you going to market your NFT watches and jewelry going forward? How are you going to get the word out? Are you going to do something special? Louis Vuitton has a great campaign now in honor of the 200th birthday of the man himself, Louis Vuitton. How are you going to market your products going forward? Is it a social media platform? How do you see it?
This is a little bit to what I said. Sorry, was this a question to Ben?
I was asking Ben, but Daniela, jump in after Ben.
Sorry, Ben.
It's okay. My millennial self would say Instagram. But we're in the beginning stages of developing our big NFT project, and marketing is a component that I'm passionate about. It's my background, and the good thing about NFT, from my experience of doing the digital watch, is that there is a lot of interest from publications, from websites, from all types of marketing type of strategies that are interested in luxury NFTs. I remember we did a press outreach for our NFT project, and I think like 80 or 90% of the publications that we reached out to got back to us and wanted to talk to us and wrote a piece for it. So we're and that's because we're still really early on, and I feel like it's going to continue that way. So we're gonna do a big marketing push.
Daniela, go ahead.
I think you have to tailor it, and I agree with you, Ben, for sure. This is one part, the Instagram, but I think you have to tailor it to your audience. Is it going to be the cryptos? Is it going to be the technocrats? Is it the community? Is it the aficionados? And to that, you tailor then, is it your standard marketing channels, social medias, or is it other channels like Discord, the communities, Telegrams, Twitter? And depending on where you're going to target your collection for, your marketing strategy and your promotion will follow.
Stefan, I see we are close to the end of time. Do we have any more questions from the audience?
No, we haven't. No. Thank you, Kurt. Kurt Cooper, by the way, is on the board of the watch brand Louis Moinet.
Well, I could keep talking to you all for another hour, but unfortunately, I cannot keep talking to you all for another hour. This is a conversation that will continue for many years and many decades to come. Clearly, we know it's got a 100-year limit for Daniela, so we won't be talking about it past 21, but hopefully we will. The virtual economy is not going anywhere. The metaverse is here to stay. As we find our own world so dangerous, I think a lot of people, frankly, are happy living in virtual worlds. So I will see you all in the metaverse in the future. I will be in a Tom Ford suit, a top hat, monocle, high heels.
High heels, yes.
A Jacob & Co. watch. This has been a fascinating panel. Stefan, thank you so much for facilitating.
You're welcome. What I take away from this discussion is that, there are some... the Jacob & Co. example is really a clear example of strategic agility. He's using this as a stepping stone, a milestone, to pilot an idea, to test, learn, and scale and move to the next one, thinking about the future of this brand. I think another lesson we take from this discussion is that it's important to have in mind that something can be done in the short term. So thinking about the interests of the collectors community, and not only thinking about the origin, which can also be found out and guaranteed now, that was Daniela's point, we will also think about the future and the brand positioning in the future in function of the different communities you want to attract. Because what resonates with me in this discussion also is that in a world where, at least in the West, we see a lot more economically less well-off type of consumers, if you want to thrive in this environment, you have to really think about, is luxury meaningful to that particular community at a point where a lot of creative people will be able to experiment and have a success on these metaverse universes. So luxury has to think about the opportunity, but also the future competition, and the possibility that they would be out-mediated in the creation of desirable goods and art in the future. So on behalf of Forbes and IMD, thank you very much to all our panelists and to all of you who joined us today. And we look forward to welcoming you to our second roundtable on building agile luxury brands on the 7th of December this year. Take care, stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.